Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final part of episode 12 of Design Lab. So, this was our alien avifauna creature based design lab, and it looks like the winner you guys chose from our little voting process was this submission by Henry C. So he had an interesting submission in that it was a multi staged kind of creature. It has this very crane like look to it. But then when it gets scared, it inflates itself and floats off aimlessly into the sky. So, kind of a cute and funny and interesting little design. So, we'll see what we can do with it. Now, one of the main problems I might have is that this presentation he has feels like a very finished design. It feels like there's not much room for interpretation or changing of things. But I'm going to put on my little art director hat and I'm just going to quickly try some slight variations of things here just to kind of see if I could nail down the design any more than it already is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mess around with these kind of feathers that it has on the top of its head because that was, I felt, one of the weak points of his design. It's just kind of a very mohawk-like looking kind of protrusion coming out of its head with the feathers. And also the feathers coming out of its back just kind of feel a bit too, I don't know, busy for the silhouette. So I just wanted to kind of mess with those a little bit while still, keeping the spirit of his design. So I was just doing different possibilities, and this is always a good thing to do. And I guess it's also important to note that sometimes if a design looks good from the side or the profile, that doesn't mean it will necessarily have a good silhouette when you see it from the front. So that's why I was kind of messing with the front views first because he has that straight side view, and I just wanted to see how it would look from the front angle, and if the little mohawk approach would just not have the design elements I wanted. So I messed around with it a bit. I tried kind of flailing out feathers onto the sides and doing minor things like that, and you can see I just quickly made another base design of like the structure of his bird, and then I copied and pasted it just so I could quickly go through and mess around with the side profile feathers. So I was going with a very similar approach to what he had, just kind of slightly working with the flow of the feathers because they had a bit of a weird flow in his design. I don't know, they're just very, very kind of stiff and just don't have the quite enough life in them. But otherwise, it was pretty good. I forget what I was going to say actually. But yeah, he also had those feathers coming out of the back. They look like they're coming out of the upper back of the bird. And he had a bunch of them, but I thought it would be interesting if it was simplified a bit more. Maybe there were just a couple of them. Maybe just, a few here or there, maybe some at the lower back. I don't really know. I was just kind of messing around with it. So I didn't get any real solid answers, and I could look at these a little bit and say, I guess it's okay to have the mohawk. And maybe these feathers kind of puff up more when the bird is, excited or whatever, as birds tend to do. But anyway, you can see I'm kind of like struggling a little bit, and honestly, when I was coming into this final part of Design Lab, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do, and I think I kind of mentioned that. But I thought about it a bit, and since you guys picked this very interesting bird creature, I thought I would try something interesting. So here I have my design, and I'm just going to draw a little blueberry muffin over here. Now, if you remember the description for this bird, it says that its favorite food is blueberry muffins. So our bird's sitting over on the right side of the page, and I'm just going to try to kind of lure it over to the middle by making this nice little delicious and scrumptious blueberry muffin. And you can see I'm really, really putting in some good work trying to make a really appetizing looking muffin over here. Probably more work than I spent on anything else in this design lab. um, But that's okay because what I'm going to do in this episode is actually not focus on rendering because he had a finished design. I'm going to focus on something different and I'm going to try to bring this bird to life doing some little bit of animating. So that's not something I'm known for. It's not something I do often, but it is something I like to do once in a while, and I do find it a lot of fun. And it also really kind of gets you to think about the design and the practicality of it and the way things move. And it's just kind of a really strong exercise to really understand a design. So if you're like struggling with maybe an original creature or character design, not that you're struggling with the concept, but maybe you're struggling with kind of fleshing it out more, picturing it in space, kind of doing it from different angles. I can slightly recommend just trying to do some kind of animation with it. It will force you to see your design in all sorts of angles and kind of different positions that you might not ever imagine drawing otherwise. So it's definitely an interesting and fun exercise to try. You can see here the method I'm going to be using for all of this animation is the basic onion skinning method. So, in case you're wondering, onion skinning basically refers to taking one layer and lowering the opacity a bunch so it's thin and translucent translucent like an onion skin, and then you just draw on a layer above it, kind of looking at what you did before. Now there are other ways of doing animation. There's tweening and stuff, which is basically just moving around the shapes, rotating things and doing a lot of kind of set paths and motions using the same art. But I'd felt like doing hand drawing on each and every frame. So each of these frames is just going to be hand drawn and kind of have that feel to it, that onion skin feel. So that was my interesting approach for this one. So as you can see, I did my blueberry muffin over there on the side, and my little bird creature is just going to slowly walk toward it. Actually, not slowly. He's going to take a couple steps over to it. And this is just helping me get nice and comfortable with the way the bird moves. I tried to give its head some movement to it because birds tend to have a very kind of movement filled kind of walk to their. I have no idea how I was saying that. Man, I'm just stumbling all over my words right now. But you can see how birds usually kind of have a head bob when they walk, especially if you go out and watch some pigeons walk around on the street or something. They always have that cute little head bob. I don't know if I should say cute when I'm referring to pigeons, but I think it's cute when they bob their head around when walking. So I tried to give this bird a little bit of that feel. And this kind of animation stuff, it also really helps sell the personality of the bird. So giving it that little head bob, making it kind of walk around in this kind of awkward way, it just kind of gives the impression that this bird is kind of silly, as the description kind of would lead you to believe. And I was trying to capture Henry C's kind of vision for it when I did that. So there we go. I think it's two-step walk, and I'm gonna go into Photoshop. Still stumbling over my words. I'm gonna go into Photoshop, and I can just quickly open the animation window with my. It's up at the top. Go to Windows, and you can just click Animation, and that will open some frames along the bottom. And then you can just add a new frame and turn off and on the layers that you made, and kind of piece together an animation. And I think I usually just do these at like zero point 0.1 time delay. Man, I'm gonna get myself in trouble because I really am not an animator. But anyway, let's see how our animation's looking. You can see I'm kind of messing with the time delay there, adding a little couple seconds to the end, a little bit to the front, just so it kind of has a pause. And there you go. We have our two-step little awkward head bobbing motion. And I feel like that actually turned out surprisingly well. And it's a lot of fun to like do all these frames and not really, be able to picture what it's gonna look like in the final result. Because I was obviously doing them in Painter and not Photoshop, so I couldn't look at the animation as I was doing it. But luckily, I like this little walk animation. It's kind of adorable. It kind of has a little, little awkwardness, a little timidness. It definitely doesn't feel like a threatening bird. It feels like kind of silly and fun bird. So that's it for our steps. But wait a minute. This bird, it obviously has that distinct feature of puffing itself up. So let's see if we can scare it. So I'm just going to quickly yell boo at it and try to get its attention and try to scare it away. So there we go. We got its attention. Now we're just going to do a bunch more onion skinning, a bunch more frames. And you can't really tell, but I did switch back to Painter now. So I'm back in Painter so I could draw my little animations with my little scratchboard tool. And obviously I'm not really using much Painter. You can do this in Photoshop because I'm just using a really basic brush. But if I wanted to, I could go in and actually paint each of these frames. And I had considered doing that, but that is just way too much of a time commitment for this. Because obviously you can go back in once you have your kind of basic animation. You can render out each thing like a painting, and that will make a really amazing looking animation if each frame is hand painted. But that's something to do when you have more time. But anyway, you can see here we startled the bird, and now it's staring at us. It doesn't know what to do. It's getting all puffed up. Maybe it's starting to inflate itself in the way that it does. So I'm just kind of having fun onion skinning this together, making it more bulbous and kind of having all these like places just kind of bulge out in a very interesting manner. And of course, its cheeks just bulge out as well. But its body is just slowly turning into a giant round balloon. And its legs are getting slightly spread out by that fact. And, that was a little kind of tricky to do because the legs, obviously, the feet were planted in specific spots, so I couldn't just slide them around. So I just kind of made it look so as it blows up, it slowly starts lifting off even before it's fully inflated. And you can see here as he lifts up, his head is just tilting backwards. Because, judging from Henry C's photo, it looks like when he puffs up into his balloon form that his belly is usually the highest point, and he's just kind of on his back, floating through the air. So I wanted to kind of have that transition of him just kind of rolling back and floating off into the air like a big lazy balloon. So there you can see his beaks just kind of disappearing into the background. And, this is also a good kind of practice for thinking about things in a more three-dimensional way. Obviously, you have to have that kind of imaginative spatial awareness of being able to kind of move objects around. And I kind of didn't do a great job with the wing on the side. I feel like I could have moved that around in a slightly more realistic 3D way. But anyway, just to kind of quickly kind of get an idea as to where the animation was going to go, I wanted to have a little wavy motions as it floated up. So I just drew a bunch of quick little fuzzballs going upward, and then I can, obviously add the details in. But I just wanted to establish my animation kind of as I did it. But anyway, I think that's about it. And once again, I'm doing a terrible job at talking. It's very late at night, but I had so much fun making this little animation that I wanted to get my video going. So this is the final result. You can see him walk over to the muffin, and then you can see him get scared and float off into the sky. Goodbye, our little Marsian friend. So I think that's about it for everything. I hope you enjoyed this very weird and different kind of part 3 for Design Lab. I know I certainly had fun. And I think the next episode of Design Lab will be an environment. So we've gone back around to environments, and I have some ideas, but As per always, you can submit ideas for environmental design labs in the comments below. And you can also do all kinds of other stuff in the comments below as well. So, I guess that's it. Goodbye, everyone. I'm just gonna roll back in my chair, puff myself up, and wait, that sounded horrible. I'm just gonna float off into the sky. Alright, I was gonna. Whatever. I'm done. It's over.